Each new morning begins with the same silent promise. This year will be different. This will be the year you finally break through when money flows, opportunities align, and everything you've worked for finally pays off. Yet, in those quiet moments, when no one is watching, a truth presses heavily on your chest. Something is missing, and the harder you chase wealth, the more it slips, like water, through your fingers. I am Solomon, and I built an empire that lasted generations. But let me tell you something that will shake everything you think you know about money. The wealth you are desperately chasing is not avoiding you because you lack skill, connections, or luck. It is avoiding you because God is still preparing you for it. And until you recognize the signs of that preparation, you will remain exactly where you are, frustrated and wondering why others seem to effortlessly attract what you cannot reach. Most people think wealth begins in their bank account. They are wrong. Enduring wealth begins in the character God is shaping within you right now, in this very moment of struggle you are living through. The question is not whether you deserve prosperity. The question is whether you are ready to carry it without it destroying you. Today, I will reveal to you the 7 unmistakable signs that God is already preparing you for wealth that will not only last, but will serve a purpose greater than your own comfort. These are not motivational platitudes. These are the ancient principles that separated kings from beggars, the wealthy from the merely rich, those who built legacies from those who built only debt. If you recognize even 3 of these signs in your life right now, you are closer to breakthrough than you realize. But if you ignore what I am about to tell you, you will spend the next decade repeating the same patterns, wondering why abundance feels like a foreign language you cannot learn. This is not a game. This is not another get-rich-quick scheme. This is about becoming the kind of person that wealth seeks out, rather than the kind of person who chases it in desperation. If you are ready to stop running toward money and start becoming someone money runs toward, then you need to hear every word of what I am about to reveal. Subscribe now, because what you learn in the next few minutes will either transform how you see your current struggles, or you will dismiss it and remain exactly where you are for another year. Number 1. Loving silence more than recognition. You check your phone again. The notification light blinks, promising validation, and for a moment your chest tightens with anticipation. Will someone finally acknowledge what you have built? Will they see your worth? This hunger for recognition follows you everywhere. In every meeting, every conversation, every decision, there is a voice whispering, "What will they think?" And in that whisper lies the very poison that keeps wealth at arm's length from your life. I am Solomon, and I learned the hardest truth a man can face. The moment you need others to validate your decisions is the moment you lose the power to make the right ones. Wealth does not flow toward those who seek applause. It flows toward those who can sit in the terrifying silence of their own judgment and trust what they find there. Silence is like a deep well in the desert. On the surface, the water appears still, almost dead. But beneath that stillness lies the purest water, untouched by the contamination of the world above. Your ability to withstand silence, to drink from that deep well of inner knowing, determines whether you will manage wealth or whether wealth will destroy you. Most people cannot bear 5 minutes alone with their thoughts without reaching for distraction. They mistake the noise of others' opinions for wisdom, not realizing they are drinking from a contaminated stream. I remember the young merchant who came to my court, trembling with excitement about a trade opportunity. He had discovered a route to rare spices that could make him wealthy beyond his dreams. But he could not bear the weight of the decision alone. Day after day, he sought counsel from anyone who would listen. The baker, the blacksmith, even strangers in the marketplace. Each person gave him different advice, and each opinion pulled him in a different direction. By the time he had gathered enough validation to feel confident, the opportunity had passed to another trader who needed no one's permission to act. The young merchant returned to me months later, bankrupt and bitter, blaming everyone except the one person responsible for his failure. He had confused the comfort of consensus with the clarity of wisdom. The turning point in my own life came during the most difficult decision of my reign. My advisors, my family, Even the people I loved most stood against me. They wanted me to choose the path of immediate satisfaction, the decision that would make everyone happy in the moment. But in the silence of my chamber, away from their voices and their fears, I heard something different. I heard the voice of long-term wisdom calling me toward an unpopular choice. I chose to disappoint them all. I chose to be misunderstood rather than to be wrong. That decision saved the kingdom, but it cost me years of loneliness. It taught me that leadership and prosperity require the courage to be disliked by those you care about most. The marketplace rewards those who can make decisions without needing emotional support from the crowd. When you constantly seek validation, you telegraph your insecurity to everyone around you. Potential partners, investors, even employees can sense when someone lacks the internal strength to stand alone. They instinctively move toward those who demonstrate quiet confidence, who can hold space for uncertainty without collapsing into the need for reassurance. Every morning, I would rise before dawn and sit in complete silence for a quarter of an hour. No scrolls to read, no servants to consult, no problems to solve. Just the terrifying and beautiful experience of being alone with the voice of wisdom that lives beneath all the noise. In that silence, I learned to distinguish between the voice of fear, which always sounds like other people's expectations, and the voice of discernment, which always sounds like truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. The wealthiest people I have known throughout history share this one quality. They can sit with uncertainty without immediately seeking someone to tell them what to do. They can feel the weight of a decision without needing to distribute that weight among a committee of advisors. They understand that the moment you give away the responsibility of choice, you give away the power to benefit from the consequences of that choice. If you want to know whether you are ready for the wealth that is coming toward you, ask yourself this question. Can you spend 15 minutes in complete silence, with no distractions, no entertainment, no input from anyone else, and still trust the person you find there? Can you make a decision that goes against popular opinion and sleep peacefully that night? Can you choose truth over comfort, even when comfort wears the face of people you love? The silence that terrifies you is the same silence that will save you. Learn to love it more than the hollow echo of applause, and you will discover that the only validation worth having is the kind that comes from within. Number 2, seeking wisdom before profit. You see the opportunity gleaming in front of you like gold in a riverbed. Your mind starts calculating. The numbers look good, the timing seems right, and everyone around you is saying the same thing. Move fast or lose out. Your heart races with the familiar excitement of potential profit, and that excitement drowns out the quiet voice trying to ask a simple question: what do you not know yet? What are you not seeing? But that voice is not as loud as the voice of greed, and so you leap without looking, wondering later why you keep landing in the same painful places. This is the difference between being rich and being prosperous. The rich accumulate money. The prosperous accumulate discernment. The rich count their coins. The prosperous count their wisdom. And when crisis comes, when the markets shift, when the unexpected happens, only one of these survives. When God appeared to me in a dream and offered to give me anything I desired, I could have asked for gold beyond measure, for power over nations, for pleasures that would last a lifetime. Instead, I asked for wisdom to discern between right and wrong, for understanding to lead justly. That single request revealed something that changed everything. Wisdom was not the consolation prize. Wisdom was the key that unlocked every door I would ever need to walk through. And because I sought first what was most valuable, everything else followed naturally. Think of wisdom as the root system of a mighty tree, and money as the fruit that grows on its branches. Most people spend their entire lives trying to harvest fruit from branches while ignoring the health of the roots. They wonder why the tree eventually stops producing, why the fruit becomes bitter, why the whole system collapses under its own weight. They never understood that you cannot sustain wealth without sustaining the character that creates it. I once knew a merchant who discovered a trade route that promised enormous profits in the span of just a few months. He was so excited by the potential gain that he invested everything he owned without investigating the details. He did not research the political situation in the region he planned to trade with. He did not verify the reputation of his potential partners. He did not even confirm that the goods he planned to transport were legal in the places he intended to sell them. His greed made him deaf to wisdom, and his deafness cost him everything. Within 6 months, he had lost not only his initial investment, but had accumulated debts that would follow him for years. Later, I learned that 3 different people had tried to warn him about problems with his plan, but he dismissed their concerns as jealousy. He confused skepticism with pessimism, caution with cowardice. The moment that everything changed for me was when I realized that every financial decision is actually a character test in disguise. The universe presents you with opportunities to see whether you are ready for greater responsibility. When you choose short-term gain over long-term wisdom, you fail the test. When you prioritize profit over principles, you demonstrate that you are not ready for the weight of true prosperity. But when you consistently choose understanding over urgency, when you refuse money that comes through questionable means, when you invest in knowledge before you invest in opportunities, you prove that you can be trusted with more. The wealthiest people I have ever known share a strange habit. Before they pursue any opportunity, they spend more time learning what could go wrong than fantasizing about what could go right. They research not just the potential for profit, but the potential for problems. They seek advisors who will tell them uncomfortable truths rather than advisors who will confirm their existing beliefs. They understand that ignorance is not just costly, it is dangerous. There was a time in my reign when foreign traders brought me an offer that seemed too good to refuse. They wanted to establish a permanent trading post in our territory and promised to share 50% of their profits with the kingdom. The offer was generous beyond anything we had ever received. My advisors were unanimous in their excitement, but something felt incomplete, and I chose to wait. I sent scouts to investigate these traders in their home country. What they discovered saved us from disaster. These traders were known for establishing partnerships that started generously, but gradually shifted until the host country became economically dependent and eventually controlled. Their initial generosity was simply the bait in a trap that had consumed 3 other kingdoms. By seeking wisdom before accepting profit, we avoided becoming the 4th. Every day, make it your practice to ask 3 questions before pursuing any opportunity. What am I not being told? Who benefits if this goes wrong? What would I advise my own child to do in this situation? These questions will save you more money than any investment strategy, more heartache than any insurance policy. Remember this truth that has guided my prosperity for decades. The market rewards those who understand it, not those who simply participate in it. Wealth is not a reward for being fast, it is a reward for being wise. Seek first to understand, then to profit, and you will find that understanding leads to profits you never imagined possible. Number 3. Not idolizing comfort. The irony of my life became clear to me during the years when I had everything a man could desire. Unlimited wealth, palaces that took decades to build, gardens that were the envy of the world, and access to every pleasure known to humanity. I could have anything I wanted the moment I wanted it. And in that moment of ultimate freedom, I discovered the most dangerous prison of all, the prison of using abundance to avoid the very growth that abundance was meant to create. You think that money will solve the ache in your chest, the restlessness in your spirit, the fear that keeps you awake at night. You imagine that once you have enough resources, you will finally be able to rest, to feel secure, to stop running from whatever it is that chases you through your dreams. But money does not heal wounds. Money amplifies whatever is already there. If you carry insecurity, wealth will make you more insecure. If you carry loneliness, wealth will make you more lonely. If you carry fear, wealth will give you more things to be afraid of losing. Money is like a powerful magnifying glass that reveals the true condition of your soul. When you have little, you can blame your problems on your circumstances. When you have much, you discover that the problems you thought were outside you were actually inside you all along. This is why so many people who achieve the wealth they dreamed of find themselves more miserable than they were when they started. They expected money to be medicine, but money is actually a mirror. There was a young prince in a neighboring kingdom who inherited vast wealth while still learning to manage his own emotions. Instead of using his resources to grow stronger, wiser, more capable, he used them to avoid every difficult feeling that arose within him. Sad? Buy something beautiful. Angry? Hire someone to blame. Lonely? Surround yourself with people who are paid to laugh at your jokes. Afraid? Build bigger walls, hire more guards, create more distance from anything that might hurt you. Within 5 years, this prince had become completely unable to function without constant stimulation, constant distraction, constant comfort. His wealth had turned him into a child who could not bear even the smallest discomfort without falling apart. When his kingdom faced a crisis that required strength and clear thinking, he collapsed under the pressure, and his advisors had to take control to prevent complete disaster. The turning point in my own relationship with wealth came when I realized that pleasure follows the law of diminishing returns, but wisdom follows the law of compound interest. Every pleasure you purchase gives you less satisfaction than the last. You need more, stronger, newer, different stimulation to achieve the same feeling. But every piece of wisdom you acquire makes the next piece easier to obtain and more valuable to possess. Pleasure is a currency that loses value the more you spend it. Wisdom is an investment that pays dividends forever. I began to experiment with finding joy in simplicity, even while surrounded by luxury. I would spend days in the simplest room of my palace, eating basic food, wearing common clothes, walking in ordinary gardens. At first, this felt like punishment. My mind kept reaching for entertainment, for stimulation, for something to fill the quiet spaces. But gradually, I discovered that the quiet spaces contained something more valuable than any pleasure I had ever purchased. They contained peace. True prosperity begins when you can sit in an empty room and feel content, when you can eat simple food and taste abundance, when you can wear modest clothes and feel wealthy, when you can be alone with your thoughts and enjoy the company. If you cannot find richness in simplicity, you will never find satisfaction in complexity. If you cannot be happy with little, you will not be happy with much. The wealthiest people I have known understand that money is a tool, not a destination. They use their resources to build something meaningful, to solve problems that matter, to create value that outlasts their own lives. They do not use money to escape reality. They use money to engage more deeply with reality. They do not seek comfort. They seek growth. They do not avoid difficulty. They use their resources to face difficulty more effectively. Start today by practicing voluntary discomfort in small ways. Take a cold shower. Skip a meal. Walk instead of drive. Sleep on the floor for one night. Sit in silence for longer than feels comfortable. These practices teach your soul that you can be happy regardless of your circumstances. They build the internal strength that prevents wealth from corrupting you when it arrives. The goal is not to reject pleasure or comfort, but to hold them lightly, to enjoy them without needing them, to use them as seasoning rather than as the main course of your life. When you can live happily with less, you become capable of managing much. When you can find joy without spending money, you become worthy of having money to spend. Money will either serve your growth or enable your weakness. The choice is not made when you become wealthy. It is made every day in how you handle the resources you have right now. Number 4. Refusing what you want now. The temple took 7 years to prepare and 7 years to build. 14 years from the first vision to the final stone. Every day of those 14 years, people questioned my pace. My advisors pressed me to start construction sooner. Foreign dignitaries mocked what they saw as hesitation. Even my closest friends wondered if I had lost the boldness that built a kingdom. They could not understand why I would not rush toward something I desired so deeply. They did not realize that the strength of what you build is directly proportional to the patience with which you prepare to build it. This is the test that separates those who create lasting wealth from those who create temporary gains. In a world obsessed with speed, with instant gratification, with immediate results, the ability to delay what you want now for what you want most becomes your greatest competitive advantage. Everyone else is sprinting toward quick rewards, leaving the field of enduring prosperity wide open for those with the wisdom to walk slowly in the right direction. You feel it every day, that burning urgency to see results now. You have been working, planning, investing your time and energy, and your patience wears thin. You look around and see others who seem to be moving faster, getting results sooner, and the voice in your head whispers that you are being left behind. That voice is not your friend. That voice is the enemy of everything valuable you could build. I once knew a young merchant who discovered a business opportunity that had enormous potential. He could see exactly how it would work. He understood the market need, and he had access to the resources necessary to make it successful. But he wanted to see profits within 3 months. When the first quarter passed without significant returns, he grew impatient. When the second quarter showed progress but no profits, he became frustrated. By the end of the first year, despite clear signs that his concept was working and building momentum, he abandoned the project to pursue something that promised faster results. 5 years later, another merchant with more patience took over that same concept and built it into an empire. The young man who had given up watched from the sidelines, kicking himself for lacking the patience to see his own vision through to completion. The marketplace rewards patience in ways that are not immediately visible. When you are willing to wait for the right opportunity, you can negotiate from a position of strength rather than desperation. When you are willing to build slowly, you can focus on quality rather than speed. When you are willing to invest in long-term results, you can avoid the compromises that destroy everything you have worked to create. There was a time when foreign merchants offered to buy grain from our kingdom at prices far above market value, but they demanded immediate delivery of our entire harvest. My advisors calculated the profit and urged me to accept. The money would solve several short-term problems and make many people very happy. But something felt wrong about depleting our reserves completely, even for such a generous price. I chose to sell only half our surplus, despite the enormous profit we were leaving on the table. Months later, drought struck the surrounding regions, and grain became more valuable than silver. Because we had maintained our reserves, we were able to help our neighbors while also securing our own people's survival. The foreign merchants who had pressured us for immediate delivery were revealed to be speculators who had information about the coming drought. Our patience had saved us from being exploited and positioned us to benefit when the crisis arrived. The secret that most people never learn is this: the market pays premium prices for things that most people are not willing to wait for. Instant gratification is cheap because everyone wants it. Delayed gratification is expensive because few people can provide it. When you build the capacity to wait, you automatically position yourself to serve the customers who are willing to pay more for better results. Every week, practice refusing something you want now in order to create something better later. Skip the expensive coffee and invest the money. Decline the social invitation and use the time to work on your skills. Turn down the easy profit and wait for the ethical one. Each small act of delayed gratification strengthens your ability to make the large decisions that create lasting prosperity. The temple stood for hundreds of years because we took time to lay the foundation properly. The businesses that survive recessions are built by people who chose substance over speed. The wealth that passes from generation to generation is created by those who measured their progress in decades rather than quarters. What you want now is usually the enemy of what you want most. Choose what you want most, and you will find that what you want now becomes irrelevant. Number 5. Seeing value where others see nothing. The story that haunts me most is of a man nobody remembered, a poor, wise man who lived in a small city under siege. When the enemy surrounded the walls and hope seemed lost, this forgotten citizen devised a strategy so brilliant that it saved every life within those walls. He turned certain defeat into complete victory, with nothing but insight that others had overlooked. Yet when the celebration began, no one even asked his name. His wisdom preserved their lives, but his poverty made him invisible to their gratitude. Years later, when I heard this story, I realized it contained the secret that separates those who find opportunity from those who wait for opportunity to find them. The greatest treasures lie hidden in the places where no one thinks to look, not because they are physically concealed, but because most people have trained their eyes to see only what everyone else is already seeing. They look for gold that gleams in the sunlight, but the richest deposits are buried in mud that looks like nothing special. They listen for wisdom from impressive voices, but the most valuable insights often come from sources that society has learned to ignore. Value is like gold mixed with mud in the riverbed. The untrained eye sees only dirt and moves on, searching for cleaner streams. The trained eye knows that dirt often indicates that something precious has been washed down from higher ground. What appears worthless to most people may be invaluable to the one who knows how to separate treasure from trash. I remember a stable boy in my service who spent his days caring for the war horses. Nobody paid attention to his opinions about anything beyond feeding schedules and cleaning stalls. But this boy had spent years observing how different horses responded to various training methods. He noticed patterns that the professional trainers missed because they were focused on their established systems rather than the individual animals in front of them. One day, he approached me with a suggestion for improving our cavalry's effectiveness. His idea was so simple that it seemed obvious once he explained it, yet so innovative that none of my military advisors had considered it. Implementing his insight gave our army a tactical advantage that proved decisive in 3 different conflicts. This stable boy, who everyone dismissed as unimportant, had developed expertise that was more valuable than any weapon in our arsenal. The turning point in how I viewed opportunity came when I realized that value and recognition rarely arrive at the same time. By the time everyone agrees that something is valuable, the opportunity to profit from that recognition has already passed to those who saw the value earlier. The greatest opportunities exist in the gap between actual worth and perceived worth. When you learn to identify that gap, you position yourself to benefit when perception finally catches up to reality. I once invested in what others called the most ridiculous idea they had ever heard. A man proposed using trained pigeons to carry messages across the kingdom. My advisors laughed at the suggestion. Foreign dignitaries mocked it as the foolish whim of a king with too much money, but I saw something they missed. This man had solved a real problem that everyone else was simply accepting as unsolvable. Communication across great distances was slow, unreliable, and vulnerable to interruption. His solution was faster than any horse, more reliable than any human messenger, and nearly impossible to intercept. Within 2 years, our communication network gave us military and commercial advantages that more than repaid the entire investment. What seemed like folly to everyone else was revealed as genius once they saw the results. The skill of recognizing hidden value requires 3 qualities that most people find uncomfortable. First, humility to learn from sources that seem beneath your status. Second, curiosity to investigate ideas that seem too simple or too strange. Third, courage to act on insights that others will initially ridicule. Without humility, you will miss wisdom that comes from unexpected places. Without curiosity, you will dismiss opportunities that do not fit familiar patterns. Without courage, you will see the value but fail to capture it because you fear being wrong in public. Every week, deliberately seek insight from someone that others would consider unqualified to teach you anything. The janitor who has observed workplace dynamics for decades, the child who asks questions that reveal assumptions you never examined, the failed entrepreneur who learned expensive lessons that you can gain for free, the immigrant who sees opportunities that natives have stopped noticing. Most people avoid these conversations because they fear association with failure or lower status. But these conversations often contain the keys to opportunities that everyone else is missing. Train your eye by studying things that others consider worthless. Spend time in places where successful people do not go. Listen to voices that do not get invited to important meetings. Ask questions about problems that everyone else has decided are unsolvable. The value you are looking for is not hiding from you. It is hiding in plain sight, disguised as something that respectable people do not pay attention to. Remember that today's treasures were yesterday's trash in someone else's estimation. The greatest fortunes are built by those who can see gold in the mud, while others are still looking for gold that gleams. Number 6. Understanding that everything is entrusted. The moment I realized that I own nothing changed everything I thought I knew about wealth. I was standing in my treasury, surrounded by gold and precious stones that represented the economic power of an entire kingdom, when a simple truth struck me with the force of lightning. None of this belonged to me. I was not the owner of this wealth. I was its temporary steward. I had not created the gold. I had not formed the stones. I had not even generated most of the wisdom that allowed me to accumulate these resources. Everything in my possession was entrusted to me for a season, to see what I would do with it while it passed through my hands. This realization terrified me initially, because it meant I could not control what I thought I owned. But then it liberated me completely, because it meant I did not have to carry the weight of protecting what was never truly mine to begin with. The shift from ownership to stewardship is not just a philosophical adjustment. It is a practical transformation that changes how you think about every financial decision for the rest of your life. When you believe you own something, you live in constant fear of losing it. Every market fluctuation feels like a personal attack. Every economic change feels like a threat to your identity. You make decisions based on preserving what you have, rather than growing what you could create. You hoard resources instead of investing them. You build walls instead of bridges. You choose security over opportunity, control over growth, fear over faith. But when you understand that you are a steward rather than an owner, everything changes. You hold resources lightly because you know they are not the source of your worth. You invest boldly because you understand that stewardship requires growth, not just preservation. You serve others generously because you recognize that resources flow through you, not to you. You sleep peacefully because you know that your responsibility is to manage wisely, not to control outcomes. I learned this lesson from observing the royal gardener who tended my palace grounds. This man worked with a devotion that amazed everyone who watched him. He would spend hours caring for plants that might not bloom for years, tending soil that might not yield fruit until long after he retired. When I asked him how he maintained such dedication to results he might never see, he smiled and said something that changed my understanding of prosperity. He told me that he had never considered the garden his own. He was simply caring for something beautiful that had been entrusted to him for a season. His job was not to own the garden, but to leave it healthier than he found it. This perspective freed him from the anxiety of control and filled him with the joy of service. The turning point in my reign came when I stopped trying to accumulate wealth for my own security and started asking how I could use resources to serve the kingdom's future. Instead of hoarding gold in case of emergency, I invested in infrastructure that would benefit generations of citizens I would never meet. Instead of building monuments to my own legacy, I built systems that would continue creating prosperity long after I was gone. The more I focused on stewardship rather than ownership, the more resources seemed to flow toward me. It was as if the universe rewards those who prove they can be trusted with much by demonstrating faithfulness with little. This principle extends beyond money to every aspect of life. Your talents are entrusted, not owned. Your opportunities are entrusted, not owned. Your time is entrusted, not owned. Even your life is entrusted, not owned. When you truly understand this, you stop wasting energy trying to control what was never under your control, and you start investing energy in managing well what has been placed under your care. The wealthiest people I have known share this perspective. They see themselves as managers of resources that belong ultimately to a purpose larger than themselves. This view makes them generous without being careless, bold without being reckless, confident without being arrogant. They understand that the more faithfully they steward what they have been given, the more they will be entrusted with in the future. Practice this shift by examining your current resources through the lens of stewardship. What have you been given that you could multiply rather than merely preserve? What talents have you been hiding when you could be investing them? What opportunities have you been hoarding when you could be sharing them? What knowledge have you been keeping to yourself when you could be teaching others? Every morning, ask yourself this question. If these resources were entrusted to me for just one day, how would I use them to create the greatest positive impact? When you start thinking like a steward rather than an owner, you discover that everything you thought you were trying to keep, you were actually meant to give away. And in giving it away, you receive more than you could have ever protected. The greatest wealth flows not to those who grasp tightly, but to those who hold lightly and manage faithfully what has been placed in their care. Number 7. Praying for discernment and acting with courage. This is the prayer that will either elevate your life to heights you never imagined or shatter every comfortable illusion you have built around your current circumstances. When you pray for true discernment, you are asking to see reality as it actually exists, not as you wish it existed. You are requesting the ability to perceive what others miss, to understand what others avoid, to know what others fear to learn. This is not a safe prayer. This is the most dangerous prayer you can pray, because discernment demands that you act on what you see, even when action costs you everything you think you want. Most people pray for confirmation, not discernment. They have already decided what they want to do, and they ask for divine approval of their existing plans. They want comfort, not truth. They seek validation, not revelation. True discernment often reveals that your current path leads to destruction, that your trusted advisors are leading you astray, that your comfortable assumptions are built on dangerous foundations. Are you prepared for answers that will require you to change everything? The ability to see clearly is worthless without the courage to act on what you see. I have watched brilliant people perceive exactly what needed to be done to solve their problems, but lacked the strength to do it. They saw that their business partner was stealing from them, but feared the confrontation. They recognized that their investment strategy was flawed, but could not bear to admit the loss. They understood that their lifestyle was unsustainable, but refused to make the necessary sacrifices. Discernment without courage is simply another form of blindness. There was a time when I sensed something wrong in my council chambers, a subtle shift in the loyalty of one of my most trusted advisors. The signs were slight: a hesitation in his responses, meetings that he requested be private, conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. My other advisors dismissed my concerns as paranoia, pointing out this man's years of faithful service and obvious competence. Every rational argument supported trusting him. But discernment operates beyond the realm of rational argument, in the space where patterns too complex for conscious analysis become clear to the trained spirit. Acting on that discernment required me to risk being wrong in a way that would damage relationships and appear foolish if my suspicions were unfounded. I chose to quietly investigate rather than openly accuse, but even that investigation required resources and attention that my advisors felt could be better used elsewhere. The pressure to ignore my intuition grew stronger each day, that my investigation revealed nothing definitive. But persistence guided by discernment eventually uncovered a conspiracy that would have destroyed the kingdom if allowed to continue. This advisor was selling information to our enemies and positioning himself to seize power during the chaos that would follow their attack. The turning point that taught me the true value of discernment came when I realized that major decisions are actually character tests disguised as business opportunities. Every significant choice presents the same fundamental options: immediate gratification or long-term growth, external validation or internal integrity, convenience or courage. The specifics change, but the underlying test remains constant. Are you becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with greater responsibility? Or are you becoming the kind of person who will destroy whatever you manage to acquire? Discernment reveals these tests for what they are, but only courage allows you to pass them. When you see that accepting a particular deal will compromise your integrity, discernment shows you the trap, but courage gives you the strength to walk away from profitable corruption. When you recognize that a relationship is draining your energy and blocking your growth, discernment identifies the problem, but courage empowers you to have the difficult conversation or make the painful separation. Before every major decision, establish the practice of asking for clarity, courage, and readiness to act immediately on whatever you discover. Do not pray for the answer you want to hear. Pray for the answer you need to hear. Do not ask for confirmation of your existing plans. Ask for the wisdom to see what your plans are missing. Do not request comfort in your current situation. Request the strength to change what needs to be changed. The process of seeking discernment requires that you create space for answers that may be uncomfortable. Set aside time for silence, away from the voices of advisors who may have their own interests at stake. Read the ancient wisdom that has guided successful people throughout history. Observe the patterns in your own life that you have been avoiding. Pay attention to the outcomes of decisions you have made when you followed discernment versus decisions you made when you ignored it. True discernment often comes as a quiet inner knowing rather than a dramatic revelation. It feels like remembering something you had temporarily forgotten rather than learning something entirely new. But the clarity of discernment must be matched by the urgency of action. The longer you delay acting on what you clearly see, the more likely you are to talk yourself out of doing what you know needs to be done. Remember that discernment is not given to make your life easier. It is given to make your life more effective. The goal is not comfort, but character. Not convenience, but courage. When you consistently choose the path that discernment reveals, even when that path is difficult, you build the strength to handle whatever challenges and opportunities are coming toward you. Pray for the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the courage to act. Then prepare for your life to become more difficult and infinitely more rewarding. The river that carved the Grand Canyon did not announce its intentions. It did not ask permission from the rocks that stood in its way. It simply flowed, day after day, year after year, century after century, with the quiet persistence that transforms landscapes. The rocks that seemed so permanent, so immovable, so much stronger than water, eventually surrendered to the gentle but relentless force that never stopped moving toward its destination. You are that river now, the character that God has been shaping within you through every test, every moment of silence you have chosen over applause, every time you sought wisdom before profit, every instance you refused comfort that would weaken you. This character is your current. The obstacles that seem impossible to overcome, the circumstances that appear too solid to change, the limitations that feel permanent, these are simply the rocks that have not yet encountered the full power of who you are becoming. The wealth that is preparing to flow toward you will not come because you have learned new techniques or discovered better strategies. It will come because you have become the kind of person that wealth seeks out naturally, the way water seeks its level, the way light fills empty spaces, the way opportunity gravitates toward those who are ready to handle it without being destroyed by it. Every morning when you choose silence over the need for recognition, you deepen that channel. Every time you seek understanding before you seek profit, you remove another obstacle from your path. Every moment you use discomfort as a teacher rather than an enemy, you increase your capacity to carry what is coming toward you. If you are ready to continue this transformation, to keep flowing toward the prosperity that matches your character rather than just your ambitions, then subscribe now. Not because this journey has an ending, but because it has a continuation that will take you places you cannot yet imagine. The question is not whether you deserve wealth. The question is whether you have become someone who can be trusted with it. The river knows the answer before the canyon does.